in a slight change to the build schedule, I am taking over from Kashi. Unfortunately, Kashi is poorly today, so if you are logging in to see her, I will bring a slightly different energy, but hopefully we'll still have a good time. So my name is Elle. I work on the growth team here at THI, helping to support the content that we produce to help you guys understand THI better and to learn and grow with us. And I'm joined by Jackie, our CX director. Do you want to give yourself a little?
Thanks, Elle. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jackie. I have been with the Happiness Index, or THI, as Elle said, for almost 5 years now. And my job is to make sure I try and look through everything through our customer lens, and walk in the shoes of our customers to create a good experience or better experience for them, and keep enhancing that through the journeys that they're on.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll just start with a quick overview of today's agenda so you can understand what we are looking at today. So we're going to kind of talk through our typical response rates, what you might expect, obstacles as to, like it says, why people fail to respond to surveys, and then kind of a piece on the actions, so controlling the controllables, communication, and kind of how you can put all of this advice into action. And we've got Jackie here as an expert, and I will be chipping in with my understanding and monitoring the Q&A. And so if you have anything that you want to chip in at any stage, we'd love to hear from you. We want to make this an interactive session, so there will be a couple of polls and a couple of kind of user kind of interaction pieces. So hopefully we'll get to speak to you guys at some point today. Jackie, did you have anything to add?
No, but just please keep any chat and Q&A coming. As Elle said, we'd like to keep it interactive and make sure that we make what we're providing to you today as relevant as possible to what you're experiencing and how we can help you personally.
Perfect. Let's get cracking then.
Let's go. Okay, so I thought I will give you a bit of an overview first and foremost on who the Happiness Index are. So some of you will already know us, some of you may not. And if you're new to the Happiness Index and what we do, we are a happiness and an engagement survey provider. Why is a lot of you will have heard the term engagement, but maybe you're wondering why the happiness piece. We often have people say it's a bit of a fluffy term, but if a lot of you are either in HR or leaders of businesses, you'll know that culture is super important. And in my role, actually, as customer experience, it's really important to me that if you're having a good experience, that's normally because that experience is subjective to you and you are experiencing that emotion yourself. So the same goes with employee experience. It's to do with the culture, and that happiness piece is just as important as the engagement piece. So imagine you are driving along in the car and you're using this analogy that we use very often. The sat nav is your direction. It gives you the purpose and the clarity on where you're going. It's the same here with engagement. So the engagement piece for us is about, it speaks to the brain, it provides us with their direction. But the happiness is, if you think of that car analogy, it's a fuel to how we get there. So without that fuel, we don't have the ability to get to our destination. So the happiness for us is about the emotion and the feeling. It speaks to our heart and it gives us the energy to get somewhere. So we absolutely believe in engagement, but we also feel that happiness and what we feel is just as important as what we think. And our survey platform is underpinned by all of that good science behind it as well. So that's what we do. So just moving on to what we're here to talk about today, which is trying to maximise response rates. And it's a topic that is at the heart of everything all of our customers do. And I just wanted to do a quick poll for all of you that are on the webinar today, as to if you could answer this question. What response rates would you expect to get? So potentially in your organisation that you're in, or the previous organisation that you're in, anything you can relate to today. It'd be great if you can just quickly fill in this poll, and we can get a little bit of a interaction from you as to where you see that. And we will give you a little bit of baseline as well shortly as to what the sort of expectations are, I guess, from a benchmarking perspective. So have we got the results coming through? Here we go. There's some really good ones here. So we've got 81 to 100% response rates, 40%, and 61 to 80. So we've got 5 people that have responded to this today, and the majority of you are in the higher thresholds, which is excellent. Brilliant. So thank you for that. It's good to hear. So, or maybe you guys can teach us some things as well as we go through. Please feel free to put some of your ideas into the chat. So just to give you guys an overview, a bit of a ballpark on what some figures look like, and please take these as more of a guidance as opposed to these are absolutely the industry facts, because these are variables dependent on lots of different ways of looking at things. So 70% is the response rate minimum to get usable feedback. 74% benchmark response rate for our customers. So that's really pleasing for us to hear that majority of our customers that use our platform are achieving higher than that benchmark. And then if you get inconsistent response rates with the right approach, you'll be looking at 80 plus. So from the poll that you have just completed, for those of you that are considering you were achieving that 80 plus response rate, that's definitely because of consistency and that right approach, which we'll come to shortly as to what does that right approach look like and how do you get there. So one quick other poll before we move on. And I think it should be coming up in a second, but we're going to look at common obstacles as to why employees fail to respond to surveys. And what I'd like to just hear from you on initially as well is, from your experience, why do you think employees do fail to respond to surveys? So it's an interesting one. There's lack of awareness, survey fatigue, anonymity comes up a lot. Timescales, so we were unavailable to respond, for example, belief that nothing will change, so it's a trust thing. Could you not complete it for technical reasons, or was a problem with access as well? So again, we'll come to some of those in more detail shortly. So interestingly, that's so super interesting. So the highest response here is that belief that nothing will change. Look at that. So that is down to trust in your organization. So maybe not necessarily on that first survey that's done, but the second survey where action planning maybe have not taken place. So that's interesting. Anonymity is up there, as I thought it would be, along with survey fatigue. That's an interesting one. Lack of awareness is nobody's mentioned that. So that's interesting. That's down to communication normally as well. So great, thank you very much for completing that. It's good to hear. So who resonates with some of these comments? So these are comments that employees are likely to say if you ask them why they failed to respond to a survey. So how do I know who can see my answers? Comes back to the anonymity piece and the trust, I guess, as well. I didn't receive an invite to take part. So maybe it didn't even reach them. The invitation maybe went by email, didn't reach them, or they were meant to go and find a QR code somewhere or a link somewhere. They didn't get it. I feel like it's a tick box exercise and nothing will be done about it. So it comes back to the poll again and the high scoring, which was about not having any confidence that things will change. I didn't know how to access the survey. Again, similar to I didn't receive it. I don't trust my feedback will be acted upon. again, it comes back to what people were saying. I had no internet, so maybe it was digital survey, couldn't access it for some reason. I'm dyslexic, need support to complete the survey. Comes back to accessibility, and if people have the ability to complete the survey despite some of their own circumstances. There was no one to show me what to do. Again, that comes down to communication. And there's a few more here, and need it in another language. Again, that's a cultural thing, and also based on accessibility. So these are all things that we hear quite a lot. If you've got any other examples to give, please feel free to pop those in the chat and the Q&A as well. Always good to hear other perspectives. Elle, have you got any more to add onto this, or does anything resonate with you specifically?
Yeah, I definitely know that even within THI, and we have I think 94% response rates within our organisation. But sometimes it is just someone's off ill, or you haven't communicated with people who are on long-term leave, whose feedback could be really valuable actually. So that might be one to consider as well.
That's a really good point. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so what can you do? What is in your control? And I guess one of the things I really wanted to home in on today is the importance of designing the right survey, and what can you control in the designing of a survey that will help your response rates. Now, there's some fundamentals here which probably are out of your control because it's based on how your employee data is either managed, the hierarchy that you have, the way that the data that you hold on people, whether or not they have emails, work emails, whether they're in an environment that actually emails is not existent within the workplace, and the same things for the structure. So how do you reach your people, and how do they need support in completing that survey? So some of these are definitely not necessarily in your control as to what some of the challenges that you might come up against and that you might meet. So these can the employee data is often one of the biggest challenges that we find when it comes to response rates, and you're probably thinking, well, how does that relate to response rate? So if to start with, we have customers who pick tea in, or had customers that pick tea in Kenya, have no email, have no access to internet. We have customers that may be on shift patterns and their time is really fixed and they have no downtime, and maybe they have to schedule 5 minutes within a rota to complete a survey. Maybe there's an environment that's really hard to reach, where there's no access, no office-based access or technology access. So all of these things, and therefore the employee data that you have, often you might not have who their line manager is, or what team they're in, so that when you're looking at those results, you can't actually look at the granularity of what the themes are and things like that. So employee data is really important, and it really either helps or hinders the response rates in the survey invitation method. So the majority of successful response rates come from emails generally. So if you're able to send an email, or you can use a QR code or a link, and you have that ability to really put that invitation in the face of your employee, then it's much easier to be able to control that response, the response rate, or the awareness of that invitation. And then it's important that you understand also the demographics of your people, so that you understand the accessibility points as well. So this is really important, because accessibility is often to do with how personal circumstances, let's say, and you really knowing them as people within your organization. And that's difficult, right? Especially if you're a global organization or you have huge amounts of employees, to know that level of detail can be really difficult. And also to ask for that detail as part of a survey may create some sort of concern about, or they know my information about that, or they're asking for information about that, does that mean then they know who I am and they'll know what I'm saying? So all of these things you're having to manage, and it's really hard being in HR or being a leader, because you're really trying to understand them and help them, but at the same time you're trying to protect them. So that's often a difficult topic, but it's one that we have to sort of help and guide our and advise our customers on regularly. But accessibility can have an impact on whether or not somebody can complete that survey. And then the analysis and reporting output. So whatever you put into the system in order to consider what groups of people you want to analyze the data on. So let's say you want to analyze the insight and responses for a particular department or team, providing the sufficient amount of responses, then you need to know what team they're in order to do that. So it's making sure that we have all of that data associated with those people, so that when you get the results, you can analyze that data based on those groups that you've determined. So that's really important. And I say those are hard things for you to control personally, but they are fundamental to how some of the outputs of the response rates. And then secondly, the things that you can control that you'll be happy to hear about are things that you can enable yourself. So think about this as, what can I do in the short term that will allow my survey that I'm just about to send out to get great response rates, versus what is the response rates that I'm potentially looking at next year or the next time I send out this survey. Because actually I want to build the trust that what people are saying to us is going to be actioned. And that's really important, because that determines the trust of your future survey response rates. So on the left-hand side, the immediate benefits are all around the communication. So if you have strong and effective comms with your audience, with your people, it's your biggest win in terms of driving that response rates. So we've got some tips coming up on what to do and how we can help with that comms. But what's really important is how you build and tease that survey communication ahead of time. Now, the worst case scenario is you receive a survey in your inbox. You don't know what it's for necessarily. You don't know why you've got it, and you don't know why you're filling it in or what's going to happen with the results that you give them. The chances are you're not going to get many people filling it out. But if you tell them why it's coming, why it's important, and it's a commitment to the business to help them support the culture and the people within the organisation, and show that you're committed to giving them a voice and for change, then that makes such a big difference. And also then the trust and the belief comes with the second and third and fourth survey. So what we often find is that first survey that you send, if you have never sent a survey before, or you've sent it in, I don't know, let's say a few years ago, and actually the listening maturity is lower, then the first survey is probably more of a temperature check as to what you assume that people will say. And it's really interesting to get that. And I would say for your first survey, don't necessarily strive for huge response rates, because you'll be disappointed. Your response rate confidence will come in future surveys, because what people are looking for is that you have listened to them and you will take action, and they have been listened to. So what is super important is that the longer term benefits is that you're building the trust and belief in that giving them a voice and providing the survey is beneficial to them. So a bit like you said, we did prove that they did have a voice and prove that anonymity was upheld as well. So we have a rule that if there's more than 5 people in a group, that we don't have those scores, and it rolls up to the next group that does have 5 more, so that anonymity can be maintained. There is a lot more we can do and talk about on anonymity, but I won't do that necessarily today. So the impact of communication. So let's talk about the things that we can control, and that we do really want to invest time and commit to driving that response rate. So who of you've heard this before? So I heard in an event last week that I went to, which is actually one of our Happiness Index events, over communicate by the power of 10. We say by the power of 7, but I don't think I've ever heard it below 7. So the point is, if you're trying to tell somebody something, you need to tell them more than 7 times. So maybe not in the same way, in different ways, in different occasions or different experiences, but please tell them more than 7 times, because the chances are they will not have heard you the first time or the second or the third. But that's what we will always recommend, is find ways to communicate to them as much as you possibly can ahead of that survey going out. And tell them why. It's really important. So what's in your control? So this is a little bit of a teaser, I guess, and a bit of a guide to what you can do prior to the survey going live. So 2 to 4 weeks before, about a month before, tell them it's coming. Give them a subtle overview, it's coming. But then 2 weeks to go, you should definitely be doing teasers, operational briefings, get the wider buzz going. I'll give you some examples of what some other companies have done as well when we go on to the next few slides. But yeah, definitely trying to find ways to get that message out there, not just from one person, across the business, get everyone talking about it operationally. And then when there's 1 week to go, again, to provide the clarity, what to expect, and give them the why again, make sure they know why it's happening, what can they see as a result, invite them to participate. And then launch day, it's here. We've had companies doing big bangs, cakes, balloons, make it visual. Obviously that's not always possible, especially in a virtual world, more so post-COVID. But definitely try and find ways to create a bang with your survey to get as much response rates as you possibly can. So we've talked about different ways in which we can send invitations for surveys, but think about loads of different communication channels you can use as well. So intranet banners if they are virtual, desktop backgrounds, chat sites. So if you've got Slack, Teams, that kind of thing, how can you put messages through other channels, not necessarily just email, that's sort of the standard channel. We've done a lot of CEO videos in the past, which help companies to have a sort of more of a CEO to CEO chat. So some of you will know Matt Phelan, who is our co-founder. So he has done sort of fireside chats with company CEOs or leaders to tell and get the why really for the people as to why it's being done and why it's important for the organization. They've gone down really well. So buy-in from the top and investment from the top and genuine commitment from leaders within the business that is disseminated through the organization it's a game changer, it's a huge win. And posters with QR codes. So if you have offices, if you have places where you can create visuals, a QR code that they can scan if they've got devices to take the surveys, always also a good win. And give people a reason to take part. So tell them how you're going to use their results and how they will benefit from it. So if I'm going to take a survey myself, I want to know that I'm helping others in the future, or it's going to benefit somebody in the future and it's going to be listened to. So there's also, I guess, examples of pre-survey launch. Elle, anything else to add?
No, I think you've covered a lot of ground there. I think also just thinking kind of a bit more widely about when those communications are coming out. So if you are planning your survey in and 2 to 4 weeks before happens to fall over Christmas, that's going to really impact how those communications land. So and perhaps if you're working in, say, a finance team, or different kind of industries will have busy periods at different times, and just being aware of the work levels within your organization and when these comms are going to come out, just to make sure that you're maximizing the impact of anything that you are sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Elle. Super important. We've got a question in the chat. If you don't mind, we'll leave that just towards the end, and we'll pick up on it nearer then. But please do carry on putting questions in the chat, because they'll be really valuable for others as well, I'm sure. Okay, so just going to some examples that we can share with you. I'm not going to mention any of the companies' names at this point. It would be unfair of me to do that, but just to give you examples of what's worked. So on the left-hand side here, you can see that somebody's sharing a QR code of a Christmas tree label, which is lovely. So at Christmas, these were created for all of the Christmas trees within all of the offices of this organisation, so that they could provide feedback at any point in time. And that's so important. So this wasn't a one-off survey. This was called Employee Voice 24/7. So it allowed employees to provide feedback at any point in time. So that allows them to be in the moment feedback, which can then be live data transferred back to the system that shows people what people are saying again at any point in time, so it can be acted upon more immediately. So that was a lovely idea with a Christmas tree. In the middle, we have, I mentioned this actually in the slide prior, we have Matt Phelan as co-founder and CEO of one of our hospitality customer businesses, who was doing a video for their people to show them exactly why they're investing in the voice program for them. We've also done videos in the past as well with organisations to help give them an understanding of why we're asking questions about demographics when anonymity is so important. And the video clip was added to the welcome page of the survey, as well as circulated to the whole business as and when they were talking about the comms prior to the survey going out. So it really gave people a sense of transparency of why they're asking for all this information about that person, and actually knowing the information about the person allows that company to act more specifically on people's needs. So again, comes back to the accessibility point as well. And then a lovely signature banner here on the bottom. So time is ticking to complete our Great Place to Work employee survey. So adding it to all of the signatures across the business allowed them to see that every time they went onto the email. And again, it's one of those, isn't it, as to whether or not email is appropriate or it actually reaches all of your people. So again, it's really important as part of the program design, I guess, for your listening program, that we consider all of the different groups and different touch points, and to make sure that that survey is designed appropriately to get the highest response rates. Anything stand out to you there, Al, that you like specifically?
No, it's all, yeah, I think it's all very self-explanatory. It looks good.
Oh, thank you. So let's move on to post-survey launch communications then. So the amount of times that I've heard somebody say that, oh, we launched a survey and it's now been about a month and we need to do something with this data. And you go, wow, okay, right. Firstly, within 1 to 2 days of your survey, please make sure that you acknowledge that the survey is now closed and appreciate their participation in it. It's so important that people feel like they've been listened to, and straight away after that survey closes, you acknowledge the responses. Get your content prepped, get your, I guess, email, if it is email ready, or your communications ready to acknowledge it. Again, plan that in advance so that it's ready to go. So within sort of a week, I guess, of that survey closing, while the survey's open, within each week of that survey being open, you should be using reminders as well. It's really important throughout the survey that people are reminded, if they haven't taken it, to take it. And then within a week of that survey closing, again, say thank you, but communicate the top level results. So transparency is so important for building that trust with your people. So making sure you're using some of the facts, maybe some of the sentiment, celebrating a lot of the good stuff. So what a lot of people do, and natural instinct, is to look at the areas that people will score low on, or where we need to act on. What is so important is to celebrate all the really, really good feedback that you're getting. So if you are getting feedback that talks about some of the don't need to necessarily mention names, some of the great work that's been done or a highlight of something, it's really important to share that with others as well, particularly at an early phase of closure. And then action planning. This is the bit that can be really difficult for lots of organizations because of I guess sometimes the structure of the company, the environment, again, the hard to reach people, but also because normally to do this really well, you have to involve the majority of your leadership groups across the organization to help disseminate that message. So what I heard recently, actually, again, an event was the culture of an organization is not is made up of lots of subcultures. So a subculture is probably within one, you have one manager and they've got one culture, you have a department, there's a culture within there, you have a country and they've got their own culture, probably because of their own cultural norms as well. So you have all these different cultures that have to make up one company culture. And not just the culture, it's then the action planning in all of those different areas as well. So it can be super challenging. But the key is to create a framework to make sure the action plan is put in place, and touch points put in place so that and almost like a live action tracker as well, so that everyone is always aware of all the good stuff that's coming on the back of the survey. I'll give you an example shortly of one of our customers that has rolled out a survey with some practical tips as well. So this action plan here is just an example of a framework that you could use. We'll circulate, I think we're circulating this after hours so people can take this on board if they want to. But one of the things that people often do is get overwhelmed with the data that you get from a survey. Don't try and do too much. We create the rule of three. So focus mainly on 3 key areas that you want to focus on across the business. Your different groups may want to, or managers may want to split that down into certain topics that are more appropriate for them, which is fine. But try and keep it simple. You won't be able to do everything that everybody asks for, but you can try and create impact by 3 key themes within your groups. And that's something that the Happiness Index always supports with the reporting that we provide to our customers as well. So the reason for a framework is so that you can have consistency. So instead of asking each manager to create their own plan, ask them to create it within a framework. So it allows you to keep the themes that you're trying to get, as well as gives you sort of more of a timeline, the owner, who's involved, what's your measure of success, all of that kind of good stuff can go into a framework. And then at the Happiness Index, we have a knowledge hub that supports our customers as well with the action planning to help them on that journey. So let's talk about that last.
I
Sorry,
would mention on that action planning point, something I think we do particularly well internally, and I've seen some of our customers do really well, is having clear deadlines and communicating those deadlines. So you're obviously not going to be able to get to each of those 3 priority points at the same time, depending on team size and resource or whatever. But saying we're going to focus on, priority 1 in Q1, priority 2 in Q2, and then we have a big product launch in Q3, so we will focus on priority 4 kind of in the last quarter of the year. I think that's really helpful as an employee, but also internally, so that as an HR professional or as a person in leadership, you know where your priorities are and what is coming up. So yeah, being really realistic with those deadlines and also communicating them so that you're being held accountable, but in a realistic manner, I guess.
Yeah, one of the whilst you were talking, then it made me think about, again, when we had this event last week, we had a speaker on. Some of you might know him, Justin Cochran. He's a coach at Brentford. And one of the things that really stood out to me was tell people what you want them to do, but also be aware of how you want them to feel. And that was really important. Like, so when you're action planning, what is it you want to achieve? What is it you want them to do? And how do you want them to feel? And I thought that was that again, it links completely back with the experience that you're trying to give them, and links back to the culture that you're trying to give them. What is that measure? What do you want them to do? What do you want them to feel? And the feeling piece is probably aligned to the values of the organization, but often misaligned along the way somewhere. So touching on an example then. So I won't for the purposes of keeping our customer confidential, I won't mention at this point, but one of our customers ran a survey for the first time in a long time last year, 2023. So they initially sent the survey out by email to all their employees. One of the key messages from the business supporting was the why. They continued messaging through different channels pre-survey, and whilst the survey was live, you can see they've got lots of different, I suppose, communication banners, balloons to show when the survey was coming. And they promoted it at the company event. So always a good one. So if there's town halls, company events, anything that can create a visualization helps cement it in people's minds. So when they did all of that, on completion of the survey, their overall summary of the insights presented to the board. So they presented all of the insights to the board and the senior leaders. The results were shared at the company event for transparency. The managers took their teams through their scores, and they compiled the action plans and the frameworks. Consolidated across the different areas of the business. They did create a live action tracker so everyone could see how the actions were being carried out. And their 3 focus areas were to implement the EDI policy, development pathways for career. So this was on the back of, I guess, low enablement scores for personal growth, and then communication and collaboration was their 3rd one. So their initial scores for their survey, 7.1, response rate of 77%, their EMPS was actually 0, and then acknowledgement theme was one of the key ones, 6.3, and personal growth at 6.6. So how did that transpire when they redid that survey, and what did they do? So these 3 focus areas were acted upon as per the above. And then what did they achieve in the next one? So as you can see on the right hand side, all of their figures went up following the 2nd survey, so showing that they built trust. So not only did they focus on those 3 areas, they also considered what the survey changes they want. What learnings did they make from doing the survey the first time to doing the survey the 2nd time? So communication, collaboration, and consistency were the 3 sort of values that they wanted to have themselves when they're running surveys. So make sure communication is absolutely key. They work with the relevant communication experts internally and found the right ways to I guess launch the survey, communicate the survey. They made sure collaboration was at the heart of the listening program for them, or their voice program, and that consistency was key. So their 3 focus areas plus their values that they put into the listening program equals some brilliant results. So as you can see, their scores improved overall, their response rate improved hugely, and that was through the trust and belief that action did happen. And then the EMPS went up, and the 2 key themes that they wanted to improve on also went up as well. So that was a really nice, I guess, example or scenario to show you of what you can do to improve your response rates. Elle, is there anything that stands out to you there you want to mention?
I guess the only thing I would mention is that obviously once you get a higher response rate, you run a risk of getting lower scores overall, because rather than just the very engaged people, you are now also getting kind of a wider scope of people engaging with your survey. So actually, this really demonstrates that kind of the results that our customers get, and we do see it with quite a few of our customers, where they are able to achieve great results, but we also see sometimes there's a little kind of learning curve as those less engaged people come on board, and start to see their wants and needs being met as well.
Yeah, thanks, Al. It's really true to look at it through another lens. So we've come to the end of our, I suppose, overview of maximising response rates. Thank you so much for a couple of people that have already put some questions in the chat. We had one which was around, if we've historically been poor at taking action following a survey, how can we convince our employees that this will be different? Well, this time will be different. And I think that actually for me, it's about transparency and building trust. So the transparency piece in explaining or being very open and acknowledging that that has happened and that there previously hasn't been as much action planning with previous surveys. It's not, I guess it's also probably because there's different stakeholders involved. So that's important for people to understand, that there's a different commitment, passion and investment and objective from someone who is passionate about implementing a program that really listens to people. For those two things for me really stand out. And I guess showing them. So as I said before, the first time you do it they might not have that trust. It might be an exercise where you just get some data for your own benchmarking, but the important one will be the second survey to show that you really did act on it. But I think people have a sense of what is important and what isn't important. If you are doing a lot internally to heighten the awareness and the communication of a survey, and you tell them what the intention is of that afterwards, and if it does come from the top or from the leaders of the business, and it's communicated and collaborated across the managers, and they're also saying the same thing, the company is hugely invested. There will be more confidence in that as well. Elle, is there anything else you want to add?
I was going to highlight that point about making listening kind of a cultural value, and I think part of it is not just focusing on the one-off surveys, but thinking about your listening strategy more holistically. So thinking about whether you have kind of an always-on listening tool available to your people, so they know that you care about their opinions all of the time, but also trying to make time either for you to listen to managers, so that managers can go and say, I'm meeting with someone within HR or someone within leadership next week. What should I be bringing up to them? So they can communicate that within their team. Ditto if you're in leadership, having sessions that maybe are Ask Me Anything sessions or open office hours, so that that listening piece isn't just we send out a survey once a year. It's actually something that you're embodying throughout the year. I think that's going to be really important, and that's something that you're going to build up slowly over time. Like Jackie said, it's not going to change overnight, but as you make listening one of your values and something that you act out every day, you're going to improve your response rates that way as well.
Thanks, Elle. Does that hopefully that answers the question, that first question in the chat. Feel free to ask any further questions as well. We have another one on here. How can we balance anonymity versus the need to gather more clarity from our responses? I guess there's two ways of looking at this one. So clarity, I guess it's what did they mean, or what context is it, so that you can get further information on a scenario that helps paint a picture to be able to help. So often we get asked about having personal information in the sentiment comment boxes and things like that, because obviously that could break anonymity, but also where you have got specific examples. What we decided to do to support that at the happiness index specifically is create a feedback loop on our tool. So at the end of a survey, there is the organisation can choose whether to turn this on or off, but if they choose to turn the feedback loop on, then a employee can, at the end of the survey, choose to start communicating feedback on a more of an interactive dialogue with the person that they've decided within that organisation can support them, and that still remains anonymous. So for example, if you did have a person that, let's say worst case scenario, was really struggling with their well-being and they needed to talk to somebody there and then in the moment, that feedback loop would help them. They would be able to put a question in, saying, can I set up a call, or I'm having really worrying thoughts, or I'm struggling to get to work because of X, Y, or Z. They can put that into the survey at the end, and then the person within that organisation won't know who it is, but they'll know there's somebody, and they can interact with them on an anonymous basis, so that there's that chat available. So that does help with, I guess, getting more clarity, but only on the choice of the person completing the survey. I completely get that from an organisational level, that's still difficult. And the anonymity, I would say, from most organisations that I've spoke to over the last few years, probably becomes more of a priority than it does the clarity in some instances, because you can get a flavour most of the time for the sentiment and the themes that are coming through on the survey, but anonymity creates the trust as well. So it is a really hard balance. Elle, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to mention survey design as well. So
Yeah.
I think if you're working with a platform like ours, which is fully anonymous, making sure that your survey is designed to give you the insights that you're looking for. So, I mean, speaking directly to our product, we've worked with a number of experts, both kind of HRS experts and within kind of leadership roles, to create questions that are going to give you the insight and the clarity that you need within that anonymous framework. So I think that's, if you're, regardless of whether you're using our product or someone else's product, thinking really carefully about what your aims are from your survey and ensuring that you are going to get the data that you need from the survey, either on that initial survey, or we offer some deeper dive surveys as well. So maybe you need to do a follow-up survey so you get more clarity through that anonymous feedback. But I think survey design is so important, and I think that's one of the reasons I think people really love working with us, is they get a little bit more support in designing a survey that's going to offer them the clarity as well as the anonymity. So I think that could be part of it as well.
Super. Thanks, Elle. Have we got any other questions?
It looks like a couple of people have had to drop out early, so we are losing some team members. So I think we might suggest to wrap up early, unless there are any further questions. Obviously, if you have any questions that you haven't had a chance to ask today, please do feel free to get in touch through any of the channels here. We'd love to hear from you and to get to understand what we can do to work with you, or what your challenges are within your organisation, and how we might be able to help you, either through our platform or through further knowledge sharing.
Thanks, Elle, and thanks everybody for listening.